So when Jeremy Corbyn announced your party, there are many opportunists who are jumping on to what is known as your party in order to have seats in the council elections next year. And most of these people who are elected as councillors, to tell the truth, I prefer white councillors. I'm going to say this irrelevant to people being offended. We had good white councillors. I'm commending the white people as councillors. In UK, you are good councillors. We prefer white councillors in our areas because they do a better job, frankly speaking. We had Jeremy Evans, who's known as Jerry locally, good man in terms of his counselling work. He did fantastic work. He would clean up everything. And then the Pakistani community didn't vote him back because he was not a part of their Baradari, the tribal system. Jerry Evans was a good councillor for Spark Hill area. He carried out fantastic work. He did work for everyone. Whenever they needed a task done, he carried it out. Yet our community failed him, did not vote him back in because he was not from their tribal system. You have a miserable way of doing politics in this country. So I prefer the white councillors simply because they help keeping the clean street. We wouldn't have this HMO problem. You had Muhammad Hafiz standing up for elections in our constituency, yet this individual was involved in opening so many HMOs in our area. Unregulated HMOs. HMOs that have no regulation. Drug dealers, drug addicts from all of the UK being placed into our area. He doesn't even live in the area, which is not a problem necessarily, but he opened HMOs in the area. And people vote these people based on the Bradri, the tribal vote. Shabana Mahmood won on a tribal vote. Now she's Home Secretary. Imagine that. Home Secretary being voted in on a Pakistani tribal vote. That is how miserable the politics of this country has become. You have a Home Secretary that is voted in just because the Gujjar Bradri or the Jat Bradri or the Raja Bradri has tribal groups have decided to vote her in. So the white councillors we had in the past, I remember them in my childhood in the 1980s. In the 1990s, they did fantastic work for the area. We want them back in. And of course, they need other credentials, their skills, their professionalism, all these things. Meaning if there's someone from a different background and he has a better skill set, he's better at the job, of course he should be voted in. But not simply because he is brown, he's given preferential treatment, like Sadiq Khan or these type of people. Just because you're brown, you will be placed at the front. No, you need a good skill set. So someone asked, what about Ahmed Yaqub? So Ahmed Yaqub, firstly, he hasn't been voted in. So you can't judge the man based upon him not being voted in. Having said that, no one is perfect. But at the time, there were people who, at the time, someone says dirty tactics in politics by the British, of course. And at the time, when Ahmed Yaqub stood up, so many people came to me, they said, why are you backing such a candidate? They had criticism. I said to them, okay, you stand up, or you place a better candidate. None of them came forward, because it was a Gaza emergency vote at the time. Gaza emergency vote. But he never won. But now we will observe those policies, inshallah ta'ala. But I would say that we need better councillors who come out and sweep the streets with me. I sweep the streets ever so often. Come out and sweep the streets, not just for photo opportunities. Actually go and clean the streets. Look at the state of our streets in Birmingham. Because of the HMOs, because of drug addicts that are placed into those homes, because of landlords who have properties in the inner city, they give the property to a drug addict with total disregard for the neighbors. And then you stand up for local MP. And then the state of the streets is so bad. We have rubbish, we have potholes, and I believe, of course, having said that, the Birmingham City Council was bankrupted by the dinner ladies. The dinner ladies took them to court. And when they took them to court, I think they lost 300 million. So I would say also, as someone rightly points out, the drug dealers. Let's sort out, in our Muslim majority areas, let's clean up Britain. Let's clean up our areas. Let's clean the rubbish. Let's deal with the drug dealers and the grooming gangs. This is our obligation. Similarly, deal with all the social problems that we have. And of course, some people, they say they agree with my domestic policies, they disagree with my foreign policy views. We remain anti-Israel, we remain anti-Zionism, we call for the dismantlement of Zionism, but at the same time, we clean up our streets from drug dealers, from grooming gangs, and from rubbish. Let's focus on these real issues. You want to tackle Tommy Robinson? That is the way. You want to tackle the problems that we have in this country? That is the solution. That we Muslims become a part of the solution and not a part of the problem. So, just to mention, with regard to this Your Party, so many people joining, I want to mention that there are some good Asian people who do good local community work. There are some good. An example of that, is some of our local people who I know who will be standing in the area, and they do good local work. But we need more. It's not sufficient. Someone says, Sheikh, what do you have to say if you know about Tom O'Carroll coming into the Labour Party after Corbyn became the party leader? O'Carroll is the former chairman of PI and had been convicted of having indecent images of children. He was later expelled from the party. So what do I know about PI? That PI was a movement to normalize paedophilia in the 1970s, paedophile information exchange. And this movement was quite huge in the Labour Party. So many of the Labour Party members at the top were advocates for paedophilia in the 1970s. That, of course, Tommy Robinson, the idiot, will never mention that. But, of course, there are many things that can be addressed. Now, what happened with Jeremy Corbyn was, firstly, I mentioned earlier that Ken Livingstone was thrown under the bus. And Jeremy Corbyn did not demonstrate a spine. He did not have a spine. Naz Shah was MP in Bradford after she defeated George Galloway. George Galloway was defeated in Bradford around circa 2012-2013 and replaced by the Labour Party Naz Shah. Now, Naz Shah was placed under pressure from the Zionist lobby to retract certain things which were not actually anti-Semitic. This term, anti-Semitism, as if this term is coined to differentiate Jews from general racism. Why not just use the word racism? Why have a specific term for the Jewish community? Nevertheless, Naz Shah was pressured to the point that she was removed from the Labour Party at that time. And Ken Livingstone, he stood his ground. But Jeremy Corbyn did not have a spine. That is well known. Today, what we would have to ask Jeremy Corbyn, is he a supporter of the one-state solution? And is he anti-Zionism? Anti-Zionism is the only way of determining the correct political position in terms of foreign policy in this country. And the anti-Semitism crisis, according to this book, this is a book, again, earlier I recommended Israel on the Brink, essential reading. Now I recommend, if you cannot be bothered reading books, you know, some of these politicians never read a book a week. They perhaps never read a book in a year. It's a sad state of affairs. We have these people governing us. They should read a book or two in their lives. So, weaponizing anti-Semitism. This book is written by Winstanley, and it covers how the Israel lobby bought down Jeremy Corbyn. All of you guys going around pretending to support your party, grifting, go and read the book. So the anti-Semitism crisis was manufactured. So many of them, if that pressure was put on them, they will step down straight away. The book's central thesis is that the so-called Labour anti-Semitism crisis was not an organic problem, but a concerted effort by pro-Israel lobbyists and organizations in alliance with the Labour right wing and British intelligence agencies. Targeting Corbyn's pro-Palestinian stance. According to Winstanley, Corbyn became a target because of his long history of supporting Palestinian solidarity. His left-wing political project was feared by Israel and its allies. So, of course, now your party has become, it's not actually completely socialist, because real lefty socialists transcend borders, support workers and unions across the world. This is a very mitigated socialism. And then also what this book covers is a plot to prevent a socialist prime minister. And what he claims is that a plot was engineered to destroy Corbyn's bid for power and to stop a socialist from entering Downing Street. And what it mentions also is that mainstream media outlets, including The Guardian and the BBC, uncritically amplified stories about Labour's anti-Semitism without proper fact-checking. Doesn't history repeat itself? It repeats itself that people today do not fact-check, meaning these media outlets do not fact-check so many things. Remember, on October the 7th, so many times they mentioned that babies were killed and targeted by Hamas, a proscribed terrorist organization here in the UK. But when you fact-check that, it was not factual. So the book includes interviews with what is referred to as victims of the purge. Many individuals who were victimized by the purges, carried out by the Labour leadership under the guise of tackling anti-Semitism, a loaded term. Some of them, they misquote and tweet. They misquote and tweet in order to place the accusation of anti-Semitism. Likewise, Winstanley critiques the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance working definition of anti-Semitism. He argues that the definition is being used to conflate anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism and silence criticism of Israeli policies. So this, of course, the book calls out lobbyist groups and influence specific groups like the Jewish Labour Movement, Labour Friends of Israel, and the Board of Deputies of British Jews, which these groups work to inflate the public perception of anti-Semitism within Labour. And Winstanley also states that some of these groups were supported by the State of Israel. Not surprising. Today, I've heard that so-called Israel funds people by paying them £700 per post on social media. Imagine how much they pay Tommy Robinson. And the book also references the Al Jazeera documentary, The Lobby. So there's an Al Jazeera documentary known as The Lobby, which explored how some of these groups were allegedly backed by the State of Israel and wealthy donors. And of course, he also covers Ken Livingstone and other things. There is also, just to elaborate on the Israel Lobby, AIPAC, there is a book of Ian Papp, which was released last year, Lobbying for Zionism on Both Sides of the Atlantic. Essential reading also. So then we come to your party. So Corbyn fell under pressure from these accusations of anti-Semitism, and then literally threw many of the Labour Party people under the bus. After which we have now the Your Party being declared. Now, this Your Party already has internal conflict. So it mentions that co-founders, people claim that Zara Sultana, an MP, voted in commentary. She has been involved in a public dispute leading to her departure from the party. Now, they may reunite, but that dispute was based upon Zara Sultana getting ahead of herself. She has to remember she was voted in under the Labour Party badge, under the Labour Party. And she stayed in the Labour Party for a number of months post October the 7th. She stayed in the Labour Party while the genocide was occurring, but she left earlier this year. So whether she would be even voted in based on her own credentials is something to observe. Will she be voted in based upon the credentials that she has? But she has stated, of course, very controversial statements like saying that you could only be a part of the left if you were a liberal left in terms of sexuality. So someone asks, Shaykh, with respect your party, what do you think of Zara Sultana, who leads a social profile with an aggressive pro-LGBT trans rights stance, and even voted for the decriminalization of the abortion bill that proposed allowing abortion after 24 weeks. It's rich fishing for votes, talking about murdered babies in Palestine, whilst voting for the murder of babies in the UK. So yes, I spoke against this. There's a group of people who claim to have Muslim backgrounds. They interviewed me and I spoke against this. They never released the interview. And I said to them, you do not have permission to release the interview edited. It must be complete. What did I mention? Firstly, equating between aggressive pro-LGBT trans rights with human rights is a false analogy. Someone has to claim they are the same is wrong. But in this country, the LGBT and trans, they already have their rights. So what rights are you referring to? What do you want to do? She criticized Adnan Hussein. Now, Adnan Hussein correctly warned or spoke against transgender people sharing toilets. For instance, you may have a man who claims to be a woman. Why should he, a biological man, have the right to share the toilet with women who are biologically women? It makes no sense. So Adnan Hussein, MP of Blackburn, correctly spoke against this. And she spoke against Adnan Hussein, Zara Sultana, saying that you have no right to be on the left if you do not support these type of things. Of course, we would want to ask her, how left is she actually in terms of economic policies? Is she a liberal economic in economic terms? Not the liberal left, but I mean capitalist liberal economic. So the second part, which mentions the decriminalization of the abortion bill, a 24-week baby, she voted to abort that baby. A 24-week baby. How does that even fall under rights? The woman has the option to abort the baby in the first stages of the pregnancy. So therefore, Zara Sultana, it will be interesting to see if she wins on her own credentials, but she is totally discredited in terms with the Muslim vote, totally discredited. Then, of course, she started, there was a power struggle between her and Corbyn, and she alleged that the party operated as a boys' club. She was treated appallingly and excluded completely. How true those claims are, only the MPs involved can respond. But the friction centered on who controls the party's finances and membership. Again, as I said, this type of politics starts happening again when you have these type of people involved. With Sultana claiming she was sidelined after unilaterally launching a membership portal. Then, of course, they have organizational issues. Messy launch. The initial launch was described as botched by the Byline Times due to confusion and a lack of coordination. And they have an unofficial membership portal. So her unilateral launch of a membership system led to legal advice being sought by the party and distrust among supporters. And additionally, poor communication. So local organizers have claimed, and they do have poor communication. There's an election coming now in Moseley, a by-election, and there's a woman standing claiming to be from your party. She doesn't have the official recognition. Within your party here in Birmingham, they have two different camps. You have the Zara Sultana camp and the Corbyn camp. They have already split the vote. And they are doing the same as what they did during the Gaza vote. They did not stand up for Gaza. They stood up for themselves, those people who split the Gaza vote. But they have split their votes already. So the by-election will be very interesting. And there is poor communication. So local organizers have claimed that national membership details were not being shared with them, hindering local branch development. So already there is a power struggle. People love power. And they have undefined identity. The party's provisional name and the ongoing leadership issues suggest it has yet to resolve fundamental questions about its brand and structure. Meaning, what is the identity of your party? What is it focused upon? So Zara Sultana said, I've always stood with trans community and I always will. The same forces targeting migrants and Muslims are attacking LGBTQ plus, I don't know how many letters you're going to add to that, people, especially trans people. Our safety is in solidarity. None of us are free until all of us are free. That's the new party we're building. This was stated on 31st August. Bigotry has no place in it. Now, no one is calling for bigotry against anyone. But the English population, the white English population, has valid concerns regarding immigration policies of this country. They have valid concerns. The English population, I repeat, have valid concerns of migration like anyone will in any country. When mass migration is changing the demographics of your country, you have a valid concern. So for her to conflate LGBT with migration and with Muslims, all of these are three different issues. The LGBT and trans people in this country have their rights. So why are you continuously banging on about this issue? With regard to migration, the government needs to be called out with regard to migration, even though the expenditure is less than 0.5% of a percent of the economic budget. That needs to be fact-checked. But people have concerns with regard to demographics and mass migration. So this should not be equated. So with regard to how do we protect the lay Muslim from being riled into these groups that sell them the false idea that Muslims fall into the same bracket of victimized minorities as the groups she mentions here. Muslims in the UK are not victimized. We have in this country over 2,000 mosques. We have freedoms that you do not even have in the Middle East. We do not fall into the same bracket as illegal immigrants. So the Muslims need to wake up. I said to you that take the responsibility of taking care of Muslim majority areas. How do we take care of Muslim majority areas? Clean them up. Rid those areas of drug dealers and grooming gangs. And do not think that grooming gangs do not exist. Okay, yes, grooming gangs were exaggerated because the wider population has the problem also. But there are grooming gangs that are operational. We as Muslims should be the most moral citizens of this country. If we are failing by taking drugs, by dealing drugs, by drinking alcohol, by committing sins of adultery and other type of sins, then we are failing our deen, we are failing Islam, and of course we are failing society. So those things should be our priorities. With regard to your party, it has a serious risk of failure because it has fledgling confidence of its supporters. Secondly, the priorities. The control and dispute of control has diverted attention away from the party's stated goal of building a new left-wing political alternative. It's not an alternative. It's actually a failure. And the party has a historical precedent where there have been failures. Now, before finishing, I will take on your questions, and then we will finish for today. Please relate the questions to the current segment, which was on Jeremy Corbyn's Your Party and the failures of the Your Party, as well as the failure of the politics within the UK. Someone asks, how do masajid in Muslim areas get together and have initiatives such as cleaning streets or a neighborhood watch for drug dealers? Lozels Road Masjid, led by Hafiz Shuaib, one of my students, one of the top active students, he has a whole program of cleaning the streets every Saturday. Also, another student of mine, Aqil, he carries out cleaning on Stratford Road in Sparkbrook every Saturday. Another student who is the Imam of Somerville Road Masjid, Wes, he carries out cleaning every weekend also. So these things can be arranged. You must arrange them and clean up the areas. The problem is so many people, they want to clean up the areas in order to have a good CV when they stand up for elections. That should not be the motive. The motive should be for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Someone asks with regard to the Fabian Society and how Corbyn's a member. Yes, the Fabian Society was founded by thinkers like George Bernard Shaw. It has leftist outlook, like population reduction and so many other things. Someone asks, what are your thoughts on Zach Polanski and the Green Party policies? Well, the Green Party did split the Gaza vote in certain areas. Because of Green Party candidates, the independents never got in because they broke the vote. Should Muslim independent MPs join your party or remain independent? I believe Muslim independent MPs should remain independent. Which party should we vote for? I do not necessarily advocate for one party. I advocate for good individuals. So you base it on the candidate also. So inshallah ta'ala, we will finish there.